Migrantkrisen och folkutbytet i Europa fortsätter och i Donald Trumps USA är det allt fler som har fått upp ögonen för detta. Många amerikaner reagerar nu på hur gatorna i europeiska storstäder har förändrats det senaste årtiondet. Sean Daniel, you're an American YouTuber and conservative commentator. Welcome to Riks and welcome to Sweden.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be in Stockholm.
What is it that brings you to Sweden?
I'm going around Europe on a tour to interview migrants and learn really the real situation of how they come to Europe, what they do to stay here, things they receive, how the government helps them, because it's not really that well known, I think, in American media and American politics. And Sweden is my next stop because of the bad situation I've heard about.
So obviously immigration is a major debate and issue in the United States as well, but maybe the situation in Europe hasn't really been known to very many Americans until fairly recently. Have I understood that correctly?
Yeah, I would say that Europe has a big push now. I don't know why in national media it's gotten a lot more attention. I don't know if it's more integration that Viktor Orban from Hungary has, or the Polish government, or the different appearances they're making with Trump, but there seems to be a big European attention in America about the immigration issues out here, and it wasn't like that a few years ago. But now it's really taken hold. I mean, it's got me excited. You know, I lived in Europe for a bit, but a lot of people talk about it and watch about it.
I can imagine it's got something to do with Donald Trump liking to bring some attention to Europe for various reasons. We in Sweden remember, of course, last night in Sweden, that became a huge phenomenon here where he was talking about an event that hadn't happened yet. Talking about riots, about cars being set on fire, about immigrant problems essentially, and the entire Swedish media class went all in opposition to Donald Trump and said, "Oh, that never happened." Well, a few days later, something actually did happen. A riot did explode, so that probably caught a lot of attention in the United States as well. I can imagine. So I can see that Donald Trump and his way with words has probably shone a spotlight on Europe in that sense. So, but I've seen some of your videos. You among other things, you visited Slovenia recently, where you spoke with migrants, both legal and illegal migrants, and now you're going to do the same in Sweden. Is that true?
That's the goal. That's the goal. Yeah, I really want to highlight things that the media is not showcasing about how do they actually get here, what different organizations, what different people help them out, maybe even government connections, who knows, and what's the reality of what they're allowed to get away with that the silent majority or the silent conservatives would really get frustrated about if they just knew about it. And I am really excited to see what I find because of what I found out in Slovenia just in a few days of filming, like, shocked me.
So what is your experience so far of, if you can talk about Slovenia, but that probably goes for most of Europe. What is your experience of Europe and, migration issues?
Well, overall, I love Europe. Europe has a lot of great positives about it. I've lived here on and off probably the last 2 years, some in Slovenia, some in Northeast Italy. And the thing that's got me fired up is when I see just how many immigrants there are, whether or not I know if they're legal or illegal, almost everywhere I go. Like, I can think about in Italy, there's a small city near Venice that the entire plaza on a weekend night is taken over with thousands of Bangladeshi, and Italians can't even do what they want to do as Italians. Or being in Slovenia, you see tons of Africans load onto the bus, and you see the Slovenian girls get timid because they're intimidated because of various ways that those guys act. Or even now, landing in Stockholm last night, I could not believe how many, what I thought were Somalis, were in the airport, not as workers, but as passengers. Or everyone in the taxi line, so many of the drivers seemed like immigrants, and it's really disappointing to see.
So do you think that many Americans don't actually know that this is what Europe has been like for the past few years?
Yeah, I think most don't. I think that they have started to gain an understanding of it because of what Biden allowed in America. Like, if you lived in a small city in America like I did in South Carolina, all of a sudden you would start to see all these Hispanics show up at your local, like Maxi or Walmart, and they're all paying cash. None of them speak English, even in a small town in a small state. And so as that started to happen, as you started to see more frustrations in local areas with a bunch of immigrants flowing in, and then we hear Trump talk about it in Europe, we're like, oh, what's going on over there? And I think that the interest has really peaked. It's, I don't know why. I wouldn't say maybe we have this passion for Europe, but we have this passion, conservatives in America, for addressing wrongdoings and addressing people abusing situations.
Perhaps this can, by some effect, bring Europe and the United States closer by shared, shared negative experiences from mass migration.
Yeah, definitely, especially the conservative media like you guys. You know, you guys have a connecting point that we can understand. A lot of the governmental structures, parliamentary systems, it's hard for Americans, at least novice Americans who are interested in politics, to have a connecting tie to Europe. Right. But when you talk about the immigration issue, it's like, oh, make Europe great again. Yes, exactly. We can get behind it.
So in your video where you spoke with migrants in Slovenia, you you shone a spotlight on the issue of even legal migration can also have a lot of drawbacks. You spoke to a lot of Indian students who were there working. Apparently, they apparently had no real difficulty getting into Slovenia, getting into the EU, and it's sort of like very different actually from how you normally hear how migration is spoken about in the United States and in Europe in general, I suppose. They tend to mostly focus on illegal immigration, politicians, the media, etc. But there's also a problem with legal migration. So do you think that was that an eye-opener, or is that something that you were aware about?
No, I was not aware of that because I come from the US and I've learned by having a European fiance just how strict the United States visa system is. And then coming here and talking to these guys, the Indians, even the legal immigrants, they were like, yeah, I went on Google. I think I found out that Slovenia was a decent option. I applied and boom. And the interesting thing was that so many of them said, if I want to keep staying, I just keep reapplying. I keep going to another school. Even the fact that some of them can get work visas from India without any company sponsoring them in Slovenia or anything. They just apply for a work visa, get it, come, and they keep reapplying and staying. You know, which is worse, like the illegal migration or the legal ones where they have no requirements? That was shocking, how easy it is to keep staying. Because as an American, if you understand the visa system in America, it's like a chess game. But there, they just want to keep staying, they get to stay.
So when it comes to Donald Trump in the United States, who's obviously cracking down on the foremost illegal immigration, there have been various critics that claim he's not really taking this issue all that seriously. He's not really stopping illegal immigration into the country. He's more about show and spectacle and not showing results. You've probably heard of that perspective on Donald Trump and his, particularly ICE and their way of communicating the way that they're deporting migrants. You've seen some of these videos on social media where they're making essentially a meme about it and all that. What do you reckon about this aspect of Donald Trump's administration? Do you think he's actually serious about deporting illegal immigrants, or?
Yeah, I mean, first you had two parts of illegal immigration. You have people coming, and then you have getting rid of people that have already come, right? He's already addressed the first part. The highest crossings at the southern border in the United States in Joe Biden's term, I think, was 60,000 in a day. It might have been 20,000. I don't exactly remember, but it was more than 10,000 illegal crossings that were known by the Border Patrol, and Trump got it down to, I think the low was less than 1,000. I think it was actually 500. I'm not sure if that's exactly true, but I know it was less than 1,000. So he already addressed the first part of the problem of more people coming in, right? And now he started to deport. Now, has he deported enough in a fast enough time frame? I don't know. But a lot of the people that I hear complain about that have never had to work in a government structure where you have teams in place, you have organizations in place, you have old mindsets in place, you have a bunch of people you need to organize, you need money for it. Like, a lot of us who talk about that have never had to organize a baseball team or a football team, let alone a nationwide ICE deportation mission. So I think it's impressive what he's already doing by deporting anyone and increasing that. And to be so hypercritical at the speed, I think, lacks an understanding as to how difficult such a nationwide operation really is.
There are a lot of right-wing populists, as they call them, parties across Europe that are also essentially have the same perspective on immigration as Donald Trump does. They obviously want to stop illegal immigration. They might want to even stop legal migration. They want to reverse all of these problems that Europe has been having on this topic for the past few decades. Who do you think is in a better position? The United States, who now you have a very powerful president who's doing a lot of good stuff. However, he can be replaced by another president with a completely different outlook, obviously. And you have in Europe, obviously, all of these emerging movements that are very much opposed to what we're experiencing right now. Who do you think is in a better position, the United States or Europe?
That's a really good question. Definitely the United States, because we have a populist leader like Trump who's able to make decisions, execute them in something he wants, like deportations or stopping the border crossings. And in Europe, you guys might have that, like Viktor Orban, for instance. But he's going to face repercussions from your guys' main leader, like the EU, I don't know exactly her title name.
Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European
President of the European Union.
Of the European Commission.
European Commission, thank you, where they're going to decide to fine a country, I think it's €1 million a day, for not opening up their border. So you guys have this limiting power, from what I understand, of if you want to make a more right-wing decision, you have to get the A-OK from the EU, where you guys don't have your own freedom of choice. Even if the voters elect people in your own country that they want to do something more leaning to the right, you guys have a limitation of what the EU says is okay. Is that correct?
Essentially, yes. You can't really step out of bounds for what the EU has set up with regards to asylum, for example, and many labor migration-related policies as well. So the EU definitely has a hand in all of those topics.
That's why I think the US has so much more freedom, and it's in such a, I hate to use that word, but I don't, because freedom's a great word. That's what we got all over America, baby. Go to the USA, you love it. And, you know, when you compare it to Europe, we have more freedom of choice by our leaders than it sounds like in Europe, because the EU really bottlenecks or restricts the direction of countries. It sounds like to me.
There's a lot of speculation of what will actually happen to the Western world as we know it, both the United States and Europe, if illegal immigration and legal migration isn't curbed and we don't actually manage to accomplish a remigration, getting all these people who don't really belong in Europe or perhaps the United States to actually go back to their countries of origin. What are your fears about the future if we don't manage to stop the immigration problem?
I mean, Europe's going to stop being European, and it's going to be Middle Eastern, it's going to be North African, Middle African. I mean, I talked to a lot of Africans in Milan recently that were migrants, and it's really concerning if they really don't stop, because it seems like the attitude of these migrants, when I talk to them in person, is very aggressive, is very, they have a desire to take over with their culture, their ideas. Even the scenes I've seen in Italy where they just take over plazas and they act how they want to act, they have a real aggressive attitude to not assimilate. And Europe, I don't think, would be European anymore if it doesn't stop. And that should really frustrate a lot of Europeans, and it does when I talk to them. It might not on social media, it might not on the news media, but when you talk to a lot of Europeans, I know I'm using Europe as a broad term, but they share a lot of frustrations that the normal restaurant they used to go to that was mostly white is mostly brown, mostly black. And it's disappointing to possibly see that trajectory continue if they don't put a stop to the illegal and legal migration, and if they don't deport them.
So many of these migrants that you've been speaking to in Slovenia, for example, they have actually been quite vocal about that they want to take over, that they want to impose their culture on the country that they have arrived in.
In Slovenia, I would say that like the Indian migrants, the Moroccans are a lot more aggressive. The Indians are a lot more appeasing and accommodating and understanding and not as aggressive. Like the Africans I talked to, like Ghanaians, Senegalese in Milan, Italy, they have like a really aggressive attitude about why don't people accept that I can do this? You know, these people give me weird looks, even though they're like smoking some serious drugs in a park. They just seem to have an overall aggressive attitude. Not always do they say, you know, I want to take over, I want to do this. But I've also seen in Italy the outrage when a politician, like near Venice, tries to put a limitation on how many, on a legal limitation to play cricket in parks because Bangladeshi people were just taking over Italian parks. And when you make a common sense ruling like that, the leader of the Bangladeshi or whatever area that the Bangladeshi movement comes out, they have protests, you know, so they are very aggressive when you look at any time they get pushed back on their culture, they push back like 3 times harder in when I've seen it.
Is that different from how you experienced mass migration in the United States?
I've seen that we as Americans, have more willingness to come together and do protests, show up to rallies, donate to campaigns that appeal to our frustrations. We'll do a lot more public demonstrations, collective organizing than I've seen in Europe. Like having seen all of the Palestinian protests in Italy the last 2 weeks has been shocking to see how people will come together and protest for a country not of their own. Because in America, we'll do protests, rallies for issues that we have. And it's a lot different take than it is in Europe, where people I don't fully see that many examples where they collectively come together in trying to fix some issue.
But do you experience that the migrants in the United States have this type of attitude that they are the conqueror? Or is that really kind of unique to perhaps Middle Eastern and African migrants in Europe?
That's a good question. I've been in Minnesota, where we have a lot of Somalians. I've been in other parts of the US where you have a lot of Central Americans, some South Americans, and they don't seem to have as much of an aggressive takeover attitude to me. Now, maybe they don't want to learn English, some of them, but there's just something really aggressive that I've seen over here with the African migrants compared to from the limited experience I have in the US. You know, I haven't gone to the bad of the bad areas where you have infiltration of Colombian migrants or Venezuelan gangs. I haven't been there. But just on the street, it seems a little more subdued in America, the attitude of the migrants, when I've been around them.
Lastly, do you have any type of message for Swedes who are struggling against mass migration?
To make their voices heard, whether it's posting on social media, whether it's coming together and organizing even a little meeting for people to realize they're not alone in their frustrations, to watch videos like your guys's to show support that there is a message that they resonate with, because the power of the collective voice that I've seen in America has allowed us to outrule the deep state ruling class in a way, because so many people voted for Trump. And I would tell Swedes to not be so afraid of the backlash that you would hear from friends, from groups, from coworkers that might intimidate you, to just share how you feel, share what's right. If the left is going to be so aggressive in making their ridiculous points heard in the streets, on TV, you can too.
Thank you so much for speaking with us, Sean Daniel.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Och tack för att ni tittar på Riks.